If you thought the Lego scandal was done surprising you with twists and turns, you're off your gourd, Buster. You're straight gourdless in these streets. Bricks and Minifigs is a name that sends shivers down the spine of even the devil. There is no diabolical tactic too dubious, too unethical, too filthy for them to employ. They love to play around in the pig pen, and they are some fucking dirty hogs. There is no low they won't sink to. They go lower than this note. I have just learned, well, it has just been made public, I suppose is more accurate to say, that Bricks and Minifigs has attempted to have Reckless Ben's Patreon taken down, banishing it to the Shadow Realm in an attempt to take away his main source of income. I imagine the idea is, if Ben starts running out of money, he won't be able to keep putting up a fight. That seems to be the playbook that Bricks and Minifigs likes to pull from.
Dear creator community, my name is Jack Conti, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Patreon. On May 29th, Patreon received an official takedown request filed by Bricks and Minifigs for media and accounts related to Reckless Ben and an ongoing dispute regarding a local Lego consignment issue. This is the verified complaint with exhibits. This is the request for immediate content removal pursuant to temporary restraining order. And this is the motion for the temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction.
What a disgusting, slimy, underhanded maneuver here. This is some shit that not even Umbrella Corporation was doing. They are that evil. So they have put in all of the official paperwork here to force Patreon to take down Reckless Ben's Patreon account. And this is the CEO coming forward to let the community know that this has been submitted. This is real. This isn't someone impersonating Bricks and Minifigs. This is all the vile, despicable, unholy work of an evil organization led by someone who legitimately has a twirled mustache, the most comic book character villain looking motherfucker imaginable. Ammon, I'm talking about that goober. This is them now trying to starve out Ben. They tried numerous times to have him thrown in jail over some barnacles and horseradish. That didn't work. So now they've come from the top turnbuckle here to try and instead just take away his income. I cannot fathom a world where Bricks and Minifigs as a business exists beyond this point. I just don't think it's possible, not even in a fucking fairy tale, because who would possibly feel comfortable going into bed with them from this point forward, knowing what we know now? Even just fully setting aside what I believe to be blatantly obvious, bare-naked corruption from the local Utah police department over there that Bricks and Minifigs top brass are utilizing like their own personal fucking military force, their own little hound dogs. Even setting that aside, the immutable facts are, Brian brought his father's extremely valuable Lego collection he collected over the course of his life to sell through Bricks and Minifigs here, and then everything went tits up. He didn't receive any payment for it despite them selling that collection, and they still refuse to give back the collection. So even just that right there should be a nail in the coffin of this business, where customers won't feel safe, because who's to say this was some isolated incident? This is just the one everyone knows about now, but it's very possible you take your Legos to them to sell, they don't give you what you are owed for it, and then if you try and request it back or try and put up a stink about like, hey, you've got my Legos and I haven't been paid for it, well, they might just go try and ruin your life. And then even that won't be enough to satisfy the gluttonous greed of this corporation. They will then wipe their ass with your rights and try and take away your income to silence you from speaking about your experiences with them and talking about the truth of the matter behind a lot of things here based on all of the available evidence. It is unbelievable because they, I think, have completely torpedoed their company. There is no world where this business should be around after all of the dust settles on this case. It's fucking crazy. But anyway, like I said, the most recent development is they're trying to take down Reckless Ben's Patreon to take away his main source of income. And they've submitted all this paperwork. They've given it to Patreon to force their hand to take it down. But I have saved the best part for last.
So after an extensive review and investigation by Patreon's trust and safety team, we have in fact, unfortunately determined that Bricks and Minifigs can stuff it. We're keeping Ben's page up. And if Bricks and Minifigs doesn't like that, they can sue us. Patreon out.
It is exceptionally rare, almost unheard of, for a company of Patreon size, they are a huge company, to actually side with a creator against a massive corporation. Bricks and Minifigs is huge, and they are using all of the elbow grease they can against one guy, Ben. And they tried to bring the legal hammer of their girth here to force Patreon to take him down. And Patreon said no. Now, I haven't been the biggest fan of Patreon. I think all of you know that. But this right here from the CEO, I think is such an admirable move. Like, yeah, it's kind of easy PR at this moment because everyone rightfully is against Bricks and Minifigs. But it's extremely difficult and extremely uncommon for a company to actually put their own ass on the line to help a creator and protect a creator they believe is in the right. Because there is a chance Patreon does get sued here. They are going against the orders that have been submitted to them for this takedown. So they could be on the hook, which I find extremely admirable for them to be willing to fight with Ben to protect him against this injustice, or what appears to be injustice based on every single piece of evidence that has been provided, of which Bricks and Minifigs plus the police department have provided none. Actually, zero evidence of their own, by the way. So I think this deserves a big round of applause here from Patreon to just say, fuck you, we're going to keep it up. Yes, you submitted all this paperwork, congratulations, it's going in the trash. And if you want to proceed further, you can sue us. That's kind of them big dogging them because Patreon does dwarf Bricks and Minifigs. So Bricks and Minifigs loves to talk about how they will drain their opponents of resources through long drawn out legal battles because they have enough money to just burn on it. So then it'll end up costing the normal civilian more than they would have ever stood to gain. Well, they can't really do that against Patreon because Patreon will actually just slap them silly. They have much more money than Bricks and Minifigs. So they probably tugging at their collar like, eek, we can't make that threat against them. It won't work. That'll fall flat. So I really do think this was not only very surprising from Patreon, but very impressive. Like I have to give it a round of applause. Big hats off to them for sticking beside one of their creators in the face of a corporate bullying and silencing attempt. So yeah, I just wanted to give you this little update. That's really about it. So yeah, help. A short bearded man has fallen into addiction in Lego City. But I don't want to give up the needle. I am glued to this Lego scandal. And today has been an action-packed day of new developments in this case. I'll start with the one everyone has now seen. The Bricks and Minifigs franchise owners, the stars of the circus that had been the subject in most of the video coverage around this case, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, aka Voldemort and Dr. Evil, have reached a mutual agreement with Bricks and Minifigs to part ways. They announced the permanent closure of its Salem, Oregon store, the one at the heart of this scandal. They announced this like it's fucking E3, as well as making a mention that there was a mutual agreement reached with the franchise owners of that location, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, due to a devastating social media campaign. So they send them out with a sad song on the world's smallest violin. They then immediately speedrun to massaging their sack and trying to put the crosshairs instead on the previous owner. They talk about how there's an investigation that's still ongoing, but their current investigation points to the real bad guys as the previous owners, which are the Gormans. They talk about gross negligence, significant evidence of gross negligence, as well as operational gaps during the transition and subsequent management of document recovery. They then provide a lot of information that they've gathered through their investigation, and some of it does have corroborating evidence that other outside parties are now talking about and providing as well. And I'll get into that in a moment, because it does seem like there was a lot of really convoluted, messy problems here, even before BB and JJ, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, got involved here from the top turnbuckle. What I find interesting, though, is that they are immediately going into, it's the previous owners, let's all forget about this. Yes, Brandon and Josh are gone. Okay, we can celebrate, but let's talk about the real villains. When even if Brandon and Joshua weren't immediately responsible for how sloppy everything got off rip, they are responsible for their own behavior. We have oodles of body cams, which I know about the unredacted body cams. I watched those. It definitely doesn't look good for the Bricks and Minifig side of things, but I don't believe I'm actually allowed to show anything or talk about that in depth because I don't know if it's entirely legal how they were obtained. But even outside of that, we have the evidence of Brandon and Josh's behavior to Ben on camera and the things that were being said over the phone and how aggressive and vulgar and hostile they were immediately, even upon just a request to try and get this resolved amicably. So again, even if they're not solely responsible for all of the hoopla legally with the consignment and all of that and what was coming from corporate or what was coming from franchisee, they didn't conduct themselves professionally in any way, shape, or form and only served to exacerbate issues.
But Johnson, the new owner of this franchise, also claimed that he had the right to that property. Here's the statement that he made to police, quote, "However, due to the claim that Mr. Mansell continues to call the business despite being told not to and encouraging others to do so as well, he does not want to give these items to Mr. Mansell." He added that he also doesn't feel he needs to since the store's inventory became his once he took it over. So he didn't want to give the items to Mansell because of Mansell's phone calls? And why didn't the police order him to return the sets to Mansell immediately? I guess we'd have to talk to the DA.
I wanted to briefly dump that clip from the Legal video in here because I think that is just comical coming from a ghoul like Josh, who is just like the caricature of a Reddit telephone tough guy. He talks all big and strong, puffs out his chest over the phone. "Fuck you, bitch. You stole the Legos. Let's tango. Don't tussle with the muscle." That kind of stuff. Like he's recorded melting down and crashing out multiple times throughout this whole thing. And then he's like, "Oh, well, he hurt my feelings. He kept calling us and that annoyed me, so I'm not giving it back. In fact, I don't even think I need to. I took over this store, which means everything in it is mine now." Which, in a surprise to absolutely no one, isn't exactly how that works. And it's something Legal goes in depth on towards the end of the video about, like, the messiness of consignment and stuff like that, and giving examples of, like, how probably don't have the ability to just not give that back. But, again, he's not the only legal analyst that has weighed in on this. There's been so many like lawyers and a ton of like law professionals that have been weighing in on this case because it's just exploded. It's massive. And what's so interesting is how there is so many differing opinions and perspectives from lawyers and experts in law across not just YouTube, but on other outlets as well. There is like no consensus on the whole thing. Some people believe it's a slam dunk case of theft or like a corporate fucking hoo-ha that, you know, they're way in the wrong, and others actually believe that it's not as clear cut as that. The one thing that seems to be agreed upon by everyone is that it is very messy, but Bricks and Minifigs didn't act optimally. They certainly weren't doing the best here, especially not the franchisees, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson. So even if there is like some convoluted legalese that makes it a little trickier, ultimately nobody handled it perfectly, which has made it become such a nuclear bomb of drama. Now, there has been a lot of new information, like I mentioned, and a big piece of that is calling into question the actual value of the Legos from the very beginning. It has always been alleged $200K worth of Legos, and in fact, that's even what it was marketed as. But apparently that was all just, you know, hype train stuff and not representative of the actual value of the Lego collection. It was all just buzz. So through the Bricks and Minifig investigation, as well as others coming forward and going through it all, the speculation is now that it was around $100K worth of Legos, and that of the remaining Legos that hadn't been sold already, it was as low as $6,200, but that varies from source to source. Because again, throughout all of this, it is still impossible to know what exactly is true and what is speculative. So like finding the truth amongst all of the sludge here is still really difficult. But now there is a call into question about like the total value of the Lego sets themselves. Also, some of them had been returned Bricks and Minifigs is trying to make the claim that they've been trying so desperately to work with Brian for so long to get this resolved, and it breaks their heart, that kind of thing. When on camera, you can watch the CEO, Ammon, who just did an interview, by the way, that I want to show you some clips from, just outright refusing to even engage with Ben about it or even entertaining the idea of trying to get things solved, instead wanting to go scorched earth off rip, rolling up his sleeves like, okay, let's get after it then. And now all of a sudden he's, the Zen master, he's fucking, peace on earth, why can't we all be friends kind of guy. Like, so he's really changed his tune now, even though on camera before all of this blew up, he was really adamant about, guess we're gonna have to go to have a fight about it. So now all of a sudden, Bricks and Minifigs is like, we just want to help, we want to make them whole, when all the evidence points to the contrary for the longest time. And another big piece of this is still about consignment. That has been what the huge part has been for a long time. I'll get to that in a moment, but another thing is about, the Gormans, because another thing that's come out is that Crystal had actually had some of Brian's father's Legos at her house, not at the store, which is pretty odd. There was also multiple bookkeeping, which made things even more shady and weird. So there was already a lot of moving pieces here. Now they're also saying that Brian wasn't actually being properly compensated by the Gormans, the previous owners of the location, and that's just unacceptable. So Bricks and Minifigs is stepping up. They're the heroes, actually. We should be rallying behind Bricks and Minifigs, because look at how much they're doing to try and help the little guy, even though the whole journey here has been them doing everything they can to face fuck him and bury this. So they have really flip-flopped on their tone behind all of this, but they are now providing information about this investigation that they're doing, and others are also investigating independently of Bricks and Minifigs and finding similar things. So it has been quite a lot going on. Another thing that's been called into question is the legitimacy of Ben's claim about their victory in small claims court. That also has a lot of messiness associated with it and a lot of question marks now. So this whole thing is starting to get even more wild and wacky and just this crazy fucking web. Now, I want to show you another clip from Legal Eagle's video in regards to consignment, because like I said, that is still one of the biggest pieces here, and there is, on security camera footage, inarguably, a higher level position at Bricks and Minifigs confirming that they're taking on that consignment liability, which may not be technically binding, but it does seem like that is a big deal, that they did verbally state that that's going to happen. And Bricks and Minifigs keeps denying that they do consignment, and they always train against it. But all the evidence points to, in their contracts, they do allow for consignment. So why are they contradicting themselves? Also, the CEO has become addicted to humiliation. He's doing his own nationwide humiliation ritual and is going on the YouTuber shows where he is, again, contradicting some of the statements that have come forth from the company. So the whole thing is very fucking peculiar. But anyway, here's the consignment piece towards the end of Legal Eagle's video that I think is pretty important to the overall case.
But Bricks and Minifigs Corporate has argued that consignments violated franchise policy or were unauthorized under the franchise agreement. So we took a look at the Bricks and Minifigs 2003 franchise agreement, which does not say that stores can't use consignment. Quote, subject to our standards, specifications, and approval, if we so require, you may also offer the following products and services. Consignment services. And that's just on the first page. And the franchise agreement template reiterates that on the first page, quote, additionally, franchisees may also offer consignment services. And Reckless Ben states in an update that Crystal Law provided the actual franchise agreement that she signed, which explicitly allows consignment agreements. Now, additionally, there are 4 references to consignment in these documents, and none of them are an outright prohibition. And even if Bricks and Minifigs Corporate outlawed consignment agreements, that agreement only addresses the relationship between Bricks and Minifigs and the Gormans, not the ownership of the Star Wars collection.
He goes on to say that that's between the Gormans and Bricks and Minifigs in that case, not Brian. He is completely independent of that, and his property rights are independent of that. He then goes on to give you an example of what he believes the logic that would be applied here would be.
But either way, I don't think that argument automatically transforms third-party property into franchisor property. To illustrate that principle, if a franchisee violated policy by storing a friend's vehicle on business premises, the franchisor could discipline the franchisee and terminate the agreement. But absent some independent legal mechanism, the franchisor would not become the owner of that vehicle. And I think the same logic would apply here.
And to me, that's the simplest way of looking at it. And it's how most people are viewing it, myself included. If, as Bricks and Minifigs says, they don't do consignment, but in this case, the franchisee went rogue, which is what Ammon is now claiming, which I'm going to show you in a moment. If that is the case, why are they still not giving the Legos that they have back? Why has it been such a stink? Why has it been a fucking slobber knocker here, vehemently fighting against it? Now again, all the evidence seems to point to that being a liar, liar, plants for hire moment from Bricks and Minifigs, considering in the contracts that we have available for us to sink our little teeth in, they do outright say that consignment is permissible. There is no prohibitive language around that to forbid franchisees from doing consignment. Crystal provided her contract that says that consignment is possible, but as Legal Eagle says, it is also possible that maybe there was an update to that where they then did outlaw it and they signed it. That's possible, but we're just guessing. We don't know. What we do know, though, is that based on these contracts, there is nothing prohibitive about consignment with Bricks and Minifigs from these franchisees. But anyway, again, if it isn't something they do, then why have they been so against giving it back? Josh was even like, I don't feel like giving it back. He was calling us. He was hitting me up on the horn. He was ringing my telephone, and I didn't like when he did that. So I'm just not going to do it, and I don't even think I really need to, actually. So you can suck on my fucking winky. You want to suck on my wiener? How about that? How about that instead of giving you back the Legos? Like, again, if you don't do it, then you shouldn't have it there. It's not yours. Should give it back. You should have to give it back. And that's still, even after watching Legal Eagle and tons of other law experts and lawyers and everything weigh in on it, like, it still seems to be like, yeah, they don't really have true authority to seize that collection there just because the previous owners had a consignment deal that now they don't do consignment doesn't mean the new owners get to swoop in and now it's theirs. It's still, Brian's property would be independent of whatever happened there, at least as I understand it. And with the example that Legal Eagle gives there, I think that makes a lot of sense. If a franchisee takes in a vehicle, they discipline the franchisee, say, kick dirt, that doesn't mean that the franchisor now owns that vehicle because of that. That would be a huge can of worms. That'd be a huge fucking issue, and that'd be very easy to exploit. So I just don't see a world where there's any real justification for not giving him the Legos back or anything of that.
But we know that consignment agreements can be very difficult, and so we make sure that in our operations manual, through all of our training, we train all franchisees that consignment is not part of our model. It's written into the operations manual, it's trained on, and it's very explicit. However, unfortunately, we had a franchisee go rogue and enter into a consignment agreement without our knowledge or authorization.
Stop twirling your mustache, Ammon. Holy cannoli. Jiminy Christmas, bro, stop twirling it. You actually look like a comic book bad guy. And the way he talks about the previous owners, the Gormans, he's talking about it like, Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne. She just signed a consignment agreement without our know-how, without our permission, our authorization. Holy shit. That kind of thing. And he's talking about like how they explicitly state no consignment, that kind of thing. We train them against it. That's forbidden. We spit on consignment. But again, if you look at the contracts, it is in there as an option. It is not prohibitive. So I don't know where this is coming from, unless it's a newer thing, which is possible. It definitely could be a newer thing. But then why doesn't he make it more clear and more transparent? Like, yes, we did offer consignment services as an option to our franchisees, but we recognized how messy and difficult that can be, so we did stop that practice not too long ago with an updated agreement with franchise locations. And one of the stores must not have paid attention, and they did a consignment deal. That would be, if that is the case, by the way, there's nothing to even let us know whether or not he's being truthful about that being something they explicitly forbid, because again, all of the evidence seems to point to in their contracts, you can do consignment, but it's just so slimy, because he's not addressing the very clear proof that's out there of their actual contracts where consignment is thumbs up. You can do it. Here he's just saying, explicitly forbidden. No, 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 no. No consignment, no consignment. Like he's the pomegranate lady. That's just, see, this is one of those things I'm talking about where a lot of what comes from Bricks and Minifigs is seemingly not truthful and feels misleading on purpose.
And then it appears that may not have been honored with the person that she had entered into that consignment agreement with. And then through other circumstances, we ended up retaking over that store. And in the shuffle, there appears to have been just some confusion as to how, why, and where, like some of this came about. And as we tried to figure that out, we started uncovering more documents, more information. And what we found was that there were 3 separate sets of records that were being kept that shows that Mr. Mansell was significantly underpaid by that former franchisee. And so we've been trying to make sure that we can properly do like a forensic accounting and make sure everything is being looked at properly so that we can work together to get that family resolution.
He's had a big change of heart, it seems, because again, on camera, he showed no interest at all in actually trying to solve this peacefully and get Brian what he was owed. But now all of a sudden, he's out there acting like he's Brian's best friend, like, come home, buddy. We miss you. Bricks and Minifigs is here to help. We only want what's in your best interest. Let us make you whole. We're doing everything we can to support you because we care so much about you, Brian. Come on, Squirt. Come on, let's solve this. When previously he showed less than 0 interest in doing that and was ready to put up a big old fight about it. Again, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about like the body cam stuff, but this is a very different side of Ammon here. I believe this is the PR side. I don't believe anything here is genuine at all. I think this has become such a huge issue that's bubbled over so much so now that they can't just try and bully him into silence, which is something that, again, is on camera as a method that Bricks and Minifigs likes to employ, where one of them, Kai, I already forgot how you say his name, but even just outright said, like, yeah, it is a threat. You can perceive it as a threat because it kind of is a threat about how they will drain them legally in court, where they will be paying so much money fighting Bricks and Minifigs legally that they will lose more than they would have ever gained had they won. It is something that they've done numerous times and something they were very proud of. But now all of a sudden, Ammon's out here like, yeah, let's solve this. Come on, let's get this all resolved. We're buds, bro. It's just so fake. It's so phony. And again, Ammon was just on YouTube streams, 3 nights ago now? Where it was a very different tough guy Ammon there. At least a little bit tougher than this. He wasn't the soft shell looking to really help Brian all that much. It was a much more combative version. But now he's more docile. And it's important to keep in mind that it's not like Bricks and Minifigs is like all of a sudden sunshine and rainbows. We want to just help everybody. We just got information from the CEO of Patreon that they have filed all the legal paperwork to try and force Patreon to remove Ben's Patreon account, which is his main source of income. They're trying to strip him of his main source of income to silence and bully him, which is the standard play from Bricks and Minifigs, it seems, based on all available evidence. And the CEO, Ammon, has the gall to go out there now and be like, guys, we just want to help Ben. Let us help, dude. We're just here to help, man. It was the previous owners that fucked you, not us. No, dude. Let us make you whole again. He says that so many times. And I believe that's because maybe he's in a more desperate position now because it seems like some of Bricks and Minifigs partners no longer feel comfortable doing business with them. There was a statement put out by one of their big partners here, Minifigs.me, and they don't feel comfortable working with Bricks and Minifigs, despite this being a huge blow to them on a business side. Minifigs.me, that is. It wasn't an easy decision for them to make, but this has become such a big story that now brands that have worked with Bricks and Minifigs don't feel comfortable continuing to do business with them. So I think Ammon has now been alerted to how bad all of this has gotten for them and is now just trying to say what he believes will cause all of it to simmer down, which is We want to make them whole. We're here to help. Josh and Brandon are gone. We've parted ways. They've sailed off into the sunset. Can you guys please just drop this? Like, it just feels like it's now all about saving face and covering their own ass in this PR battle because it's now actually affecting them in a noticeable way. When previously, before this became a huge story, Ammon showed no interest in trying to resolve this. Nobody at Bricks and Minifigs has shown interest to resolve this based on all the information that's been publicly put out there. So it just seems like it's because it's blown up so much now that they're finally acting. But that doesn't help dissuade fears of Bricks and Minifigs customers who are maybe considering working with them, where if it doesn't blow up into a huge story, you might just be fucked. Because based on everything we've seen from like the behavior of those franchisees, as well as Ammon himself, they don't seem to really care that much to try and resolve issues like privately and peacefully. It seems like they're only now springing into action to try and help Brian get what should have already been taken care of previously. So it feels like it's very tardy to the party here with them actually looking to do the right thing of making Brian Mansell whole and figuring out what exactly went on here with a real investigation. And like I said, a lot of this new information that's coming out from multiple parties does call into question a lot of things that have been put forth from like the first couple of videos from Reckless Bin with some of the claims and things like that. But I will say, in regards to like the police department stuff, I haven't really seen anything to like justify how everything's unfolded with how the police themselves have handled this whole case. That is still something that is very much in a really weird spot. But in regards to like if Ben stepped out of line legally, like within the bounds of the law, or if he did things solely for content that actually was detrimental to getting this solved, as well as some of like the claims he made about the small claims court default judgment victory, things like that, all of that is what's now being thrown into a bit of disarray. I'm curious to see Ben's response to it, to give his side of things on that conversation now. But there has been a lot of new information, and no matter how you look at it, the fact of the matter is, it should have never gotten to this point. There was a very real problem with the way Bricks and Minifigs, the corporation, handled all of this, as well as the way they handled the takeover of this location, making it very sloppy and very messy with the previous owners and then the new franchisees coming in with a fucking chip on their shoulder and steam out of their ears, making it irreconcilable here, where an innocent man and his father's lifelong Lego collection got thrown into a shitstorm. So, and there was no real way of getting it solved through the proper channels, allegedly, based on everything we've seen here. And the corporation showed no signs of trying to work with him privately. They keep saying that they were insisting that Brian provide documents, but he kept dodging that. I find that claim a little hard to believe. That's he said, she said shit, of course, but I find that very difficult to imagine. Brian was just like sweating when they asked for documentation when there already is documentation that the public has access to, so Brian definitely would have as well. He probably would have submitted it if that was actually something that they wanted. And Bricks and Minifigs in their previous statement was talking about how Ben and his team didn't want to submit anything to him, but there is literal videos of them trying to submit the evidence to them and Bricks and Minifigs not being receptive to it. So I'm more inclined to believe Brian's account of things, where Bricks and Minifigs wasn't willing to work with him to resolve this through this messy takeover of that location where his Legos got all lost in translation and everything got all fucking cattywampus. Again, the fact of the matter is, an innocent man and his father's collection of Legos that he spent his whole life collecting that was very valuable got lost in a shitstorm here of a corporation that doesn't seem to care about what happened there and didn't really care to investigate that thoroughly, as well as some franchise owners that really immediately held a grudge against him. Again, according to that document, he'd even said he doesn't want to give them back because of the phone calls. That's some pretty goober shit. So this whole thing seems like a fucking mess, even more so now than like a week ago. So yeah, I just wanted to give you the little update on it. That's really about it. So yeah. This Lego scandal's got the streets looking like it's Gotham City out here. So CoffeeZilla just made a video talking about his investigation that he's doing into the whole Bricks and Minifigs, Reckless Bin thing. And in doing this investigation, he discovered Lego Vigilantes that have been going around causing a ruckus, even getting into physical altercations, throwing hands, eating knuckle sandwiches at other Bricks and Minifigs locations because they believe that they're all operated by the same cast of comic book villains here. I didn't think this needed to be said. I thought this was something everyone understood, but clearly not. The Bricks and Minifigs that started this whole thing was a single location that corporate came in and took control of and put in Dumb and Dumber. And that was Patient Zero here. That was the genesis of all of this. But that doesn't mean every Bricks and Minifigs is the same. See, the way that this works is these are franchise locations. So that means they are owned and operated by individuals that aren't necessarily Bricks and Minifigs corporate zombies like Ammon. Ammon isn't going to each and every single one of these locations with it putting everyone under his thumb and fucking tweaking on their nipples or anything. These other locations, like the ones where people are now going in their fucking slap box and getting the brass knuckles put on, are not associated with what happened here and likely have no involvement with Ammon or any of the higher-ups on the Bricks and Minifigs food chain. They are separate entities under the same umbrella, but they are operated by different individuals that likely don't have a whole lot of, exchanging of saliva with the top brass at corporate. This isn't the fucking Tyranids. It's not some giant hive mind here where you march into your local Bricks and Minifigs in bumfuck Idaho and start beating up the manager there. All of a sudden, Ammon's going to be feeling all of those blows and falling over in pain while he's taking a shower. They are not connected in that way. They are owned, overall managed by the same big corporation, which is Bricks and Minifigs, but these franchisee locations have nothing to do with what happened here or what Bricks and Minifigs corporate has been doing. And likely they are also extremely upset about everything that's happened here because it is affecting their business as well, because now there's no trust in the Bricks and Minifigs name, which is something I was talking about, where this torpedoes the entire business across the board because of this. Now, if there's ever a problem at a franchisee location, customers don't feel safe, that corporate will come in and help them. Based on everything that's happened here, they would be fearful, most likely, that they'll get butt-fucked by corporate should there arise an issue. So all of the Bricks and Minifigs locations outside of the main one that started all this probably aren't happy about how the corporate zombies at the main HQ have been conducting themselves or what's happened with this one location. So I didn't think any of that was something that needed explaining. I thought everyone understood how that worked, but clearly that is not the case after what I've seen CoffeeZilla covering here.
Some footage which kind of disturbed me, and I'm not going to be able to have the chance to address it in my main video, so I want to address it here while we're editing that mammoth of an investigation. I was leaked videos from inside Bricks and Minifigs stores, other locations that have nothing to do with like the Reckless Bin missing Lego collection. People are going into them trying to be vigilantes and trying to get justice, by going up and harassing store employees. And in one case, I'll show you, they actually get in a physical fight with not someone from the store, not someone involved, but just a random guy who's trying to ask them to leave.
That's crazy. Obviously, this story has blown up to an unfathomable degree, but I don't know how anyone could delude themselves into thinking this kind of behavior is in any way, shape, or form helpful in the pursuit of justice. Like, how is you going to a Bricks and Minifigs and just beating up a guy, just going over there and then just locking into pugilistic combat with a dude, somehow helping anything or anyone in this huge scandal? I just don't get it. I think in the case of these vigilantes, a lot of them were just looking for some kind of excuse to go start some shit, to feel justified in going out there and being a menace and fighting people. That's what I think. Because it is something we've seen before where if a story blows up and there's like a perceived villain of the story, some people will go try and take advantage of that, exploiting that to like get rowdy or sometimes get physical and then believe that they're on the right side of history and then everyone's going to clap for them. Like, I just beat up this guy. Why is no one smiling? Where's my applause? Like, there's just, I think, some people that are fishing for excuses for justified combat. And so they believed this was a slam dunk for them. But it's not. This is absolutely awful. It's so brain dead, you are a fucking idiot. To the guy that went out there and just started fighting in the bricks and minifigs.
A lot of these people, you can just see they're trying to channel that energy, but you're not that guy. You're at the wrong store. Okay, let's start there. You're talking to the wrong people. You're fighting, physically fighting with the wrong people. These people are having a UFC match on the floor of a Lego store over another guy's Lego collection that has nothing to do with any of what you're about to see. So
true. It is unbelievably stupid. Like, I don't believe a lot of the people that are doing this kind of behavior actually even care about what's happened here at all. Like I said, I still believe it's people that were looking for some kind of excuse to go out and start some shit and not get in trouble for it. But let's say a few of them really are doing this because they care this deeply about the story. Well, doing this is extremely detrimental in the pursuit of justice. All you are doing here is actually helping bricks and minifigs, because now you are giving them very easy ammunition to use legally to prove that Ben and his viral social media campaign have done nothing but incite violence against innocent people in the bricks and minifigs umbrella. You are giving them very, very easy layups here, like, look, here's video evidence showcasing terrible behavior, violent and aggressive behavior from individuals that have been inspired by Reckless Ben's videos. You see, Ben is the bad guy here. Look at what's happening to these innocent people in these stores. Like, I don't know why people can't, like, fucking think at all before going out and doing stupid shit like this. It's so incredibly dumb.
here's the first video that I saw. I'm gonna be blurring out some of this just for privacy reasons, and also because there are children in some of these videos, and I just want to make sure they don't get caught up in this.
You cannot talk to children in here, bro. You cannot talk to children in here. Not in my store. Look it up. Not in my store. You cannot talk to children. Call security. We're calling security. Call. Sir, if you are harassing our customers, they steal from people. Look at Reckless Ben's video. You are harassing.
Okay, so a guy with sunglasses and a sleeveless shirt walks into a random bricks and minifigs, from what it looks like, and decides to tell one of the store employees, hey, go look at Reckless Ben's YouTube channel. Go, as if he probably hasn't seen it already, and as if he has anything to do with it.
I can almost guarantee you every single franchisee across the country, across the globe, any single person with a pulse in the Lego community has probably heard about what's happened here with that bricks and minifigs location in the Reckless Ben video series. They all know about it. And like I said, they are probably also not happy about it because it is affecting their business that they operate. Totally separate from everything that's happened over there and what's happened with corporate and the way that Ammon has conducted himself. So these locations, like the one that this guy is now targeting, they have nothing to do with it, can't do anything about it, and there are people now demanding that every Bricks and Minifigs franchisee just close their doors now in protest of what's happened here. It's not exactly that easy. This is their livelihood. This is how they put food on the table for their families. They can't just be like, oh, I saw that Reckless Ben video, alright, time to pack everything up, time to completely shut everything down and have $0 and have no backup plan overnight now. That is extremely unreasonable, and I imagine a lot of these owners are all trying to figure out what the next steps forward are in light of all of this because of how bad this has become. And I imagine a lot of them aren't very supportive of how corporate has handled it. I don't think anyone in the world is necessarily on the side of how they've conducted themselves, but they operate totally separate from all of the hoopla that's happened. So it's not exactly something as easy as just, all right, time to move on, we're done here. Like, do you do that? Bricks and Minifigs is far from the only shady, possibly, allegedly corrupt corporation in America. And I imagine a lot of people watching this work jobs at major corporations. Do you go in and quit when you learn about the mistreatment of employees or a lot of the unsavory dealings of these mega corporations? I would imagine probably not, because it's a very difficult thing to just do, uprooting your whole life immediately overnight with no backup plan on where to go next. Like, I don't know why all of a sudden that's being requested of Bricks and Minifigs franchisees now.
I mean, I don't know. What's this guy supposed to do? Oh, geez, I saw the video, and now I'm going to make everything right. And I'm going to give back the collection. How does this guy know? This guy doesn't know anything. What are you doing? This looks ridiculous.
It's who you work for, you guys. You're working for Trump, bro.
What?
You're working for Trump. Doors over here, pal. Okay.
I swear people are using the fact that, you know, the cops have behaved awfully. A lot of people have behaved awfully in this situation to pretend it's like the day of the purge and they can live out their fantasy, going up to random store employees and saying, you work for Trump, bro.
You're working for Trump, bro. You're working for Trump.
CoffeeZilla is sharing the same sentiment I am here about where, because this has become so big, everyone feels like now everything's permissible. You can go out there and just cause fucking havoc at brick and minifigs locations. PvP enabled now. This guy's going in there saying you're working for Trump. Trump probably can't even spell Lego. Like, I have no idea where that's even coming from here. I didn't recognize the Trump administration got involved in the bricks and minifigs scandal. That's news to me.
From another store location. In it, you'll see 3 people. One, in green, he came in to confront the manager. Up here is the store manager in blue. And over here, we got our white knight.
No. Cool. Here in public, yeah. You guys are liars. Yeah, I'm sure. No trespass. Hey, you call them one. Yeah, do it.
So you can hear a little bit. He starts talking about something, and then you guys are liars. And then the guy responds, look, I'm going to trespass you. The other guy laughs and goes, yeah, do it.
Yeah, I'm sure. No trespass. Hey, you call them one. Yeah, do it. Let's make it it's gonna be at least like why are you in my store? You're gonna leave next year. Get out of here. Get up. You're gonna have a serious attack.
So CoffeeZilla gave a great, concise summary of exactly what unfolds here. I'm just kind of showing you the footage itself, but basically, that guy's gone in there to berate the manager, talking about how he's working for liars, and then another customer over there is hearing this, and he's not too happy that they're besmirching the good name of the bricks and minifigs that he's in. So the other customer is coming to defend the honor of this store, which is outrageously silly. The guy doesn't even work there, is not even associated with the company in any way, shape, or form. He's just a shopper who didn't like hearing these mean things about bricks and minifigs. So he physically intervenes, puts hands on the guy, and that's what starts the fight.
You're going on your side one, leave. Who are you? You work here? No, I don't. Who's fucking you? I'm sure. You know why I'm talking about? Yeah, I do. You know why? Now get out. You want to wrap this up in this? You have no authority. I don't work here. You don't either. Yeah.
So our altercation really is one guy going, you don't work here, and the other guy says, well, neither do you. This ain't gonna find the Legos. Brian Mansell's collection ain't in the store, guys.
I just wanted to speak with you. Then you leave. Dude, who are you? You have no authority. Why don't you tell me what happened? Why are you not listening? Why are you not listening to someone listening?
I know I'm going to have to blur a lot of this. They're getting in some serious, brain damage in some of these hits here. A little CTE over a Lego store, guys. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And
it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's very true. I cannot wrap my head around how anyone would think this is somehow helpful in any way, shape, or form. To be marching into the local Lego store here like you're some superhero to have some stern words with the manager. And then I also can't understand how just a customer at the store would be like, absolutely not on my watch, and then start putting hands on the guy for it and then getting into a fight, like a full-blown fight. It's just absurd. It's actual, it's just preposterous.
No. Sorry, bitch. Fucking fuck. Retribution's coming. Oh, justice, God, justice, glory, always. You will be testified to life. Yeah, I'm going to walk you. Why are you a business expert? They took my phone.
Okay, so pretty much from here, you can see what starts to be drips of blood falling from the guy in black's face. I mean, his face is jacked up from this fight.
Actually pretty brutal. So he does have a lot of blood leaking from his face there. The guy then leaves the store, apparently took his phone too, so he robbed him as well. I don't see how he thinks he's the hero in the story by brutalizing this guy.
It's embarrassing. You're just another bad person in this situation if you behave like this. And even the guy who's like playing, superhero in the store, going up to the other guy and engaging and trying to put hands on the other guy, that also is just escalating things. I feel like this entire situation has been a series of unnecessary escalations.
It really is just embarrassing trash behavior all around. I didn't think there was a world where people would think that somehow this kind of action is justified or helpful to the overall case here and the pursuit of justice. I didn't realize there was confusion on how all of this was even unfolding in the first place in regards to it being this one location and those franchisees. I didn't realize people thought that extended to every single Bricks and Minifigs around the country. That is just not how it works. You going to your local one isn't going to somehow locate Brian's father's Legos, or you're not going to uncover some huge secret there that blows the lid wide open on this case or anything like that. All you're going to do is, once again, cause a fucking unnecessary ruckus like this, maybe get into a fight, I suppose. It's just dumb. It really is. So yeah, the Lego Vigilante trend here, pretty cringe shit. That's really about it. So yeah. It is bonkers that this Lego scandal keeps snowballing into this avalanche of degeneracy, discovering new unhinged lows that previously went undiscovered in the meta. They're finding new tech here, Bricks and Minifigs that is, for just bafflingly awful decisions here. Now they have fully opened Pandora's box. They have unleashed the plagues out there, just misery. It's pandemonium. It's crazy because it's like Bricks and Minifigs is a Voltorb whose only move is self-destruct, and they are spamming that bitch. They are just finding every possible angle to ruin their reputation. If corporate ass fuckage was a sport, Bricks and Minifigs would be Michael Jordan.
Episode 3 is finally finished after crazy all-nighters and basically destroying my health. But I can't post it or I will go to jail. And not only that, I will also immediately lose my lawsuit of $300,000, and the GoFundMe we made for Brian will go straight to this mystery company that I am no longer allowed to talk about.
All of us are still trying to piece together the puzzle here and figure out who this mystery company could be. It's like a Smash Brothers character you haven't unlocked yet. We just can't quite make it out yet, but I do have a hunch, though I'm, of course, not 100% sure who the culprit might be. We'll have to get Scooby-Doo on this case. So now they have ball-gagged Reckless Ben here. He was giving a status update on the whereabouts of episode 3, that it was completed, ready to rock and roll, but he is now unable to share that because it would put him at risk of going to jail and instantly losing his lawsuit, and also all of the money raised through the GoFundMe for Brian and his family would be forfeit. So he can't release part 3 of the investigation on this massive Lego scandal because of this legal hoopla he finds himself wrapped up in. Now, right away, I want to talk about something because I've seen a lot of people mentioning that the methods that been used here were really counterproductive and may have actually been harmful in the grand scheme of things in this case. And while I do understand that criticism, it seems like some of the things he was doing may be purely for content, like that was the impetus behind a couple of the decisions. What's inarguable is that what has happened as a result of this is a net positive for the actual victims of Bricks and Minifigs here, which is Brian and his family. The money raised through the GoFundMe is life-changing, and it is no doubt a good thing. And showcasing the way Bricks and Minifigs corporate, as well as how those individual franchisees conducted themselves, is also an extremely important thing as a PSA to the Lego community with who they might be doing business with. So I think no matter how you spin it, no matter how you look at this and peel back the layers of the onion, I think even if you didn't agree with all the things Ben did, which I do understand in a few instances, I think all of it did lead to something very important, which was trying to help someone that had been wronged by a corporation that refused to try and make things right without this public spectacle unfolding here. And also, unironically, Ben has made a sacrifice to like his personal freedom. He's went to jail twice for this and is now wrapped up in some very serious litigation. And all of that under the attempts to try and make things right for Brian. And like I said, again, even if you don't agree with all the ways he went about it, nothing would have been changing without Ben doing those things. Brian still wouldn't have been getting what he was owed, or Bricks and Minifigs and the franchisee would have still been just giving him the cold shoulder, treating him like dirt. So I think it has been a positive thing that Ben has gone to bat for. And now I think this latest decision is one that can be unanimously booed. To now silence the guy who has been talking about this and diving into it, I think is always just a completely inexcusable look. And here's the thing, even if Bricks and Minifigs does end up winning against Ben, this kind of decision here is just such an underhanded, shitty tactic, already on the back of them trying to take down his Patreon, his main source of income, that it is inexcusable and, in my opinion, pretty unforgivable. That is an irreparable blow to their reputation. Even if they do win, no one will be able to look at this company the same way again, and probably won't feel comfortable doing business with this corporation. That's what I think. And again, his investigation has spread beyond just Bricks and Minifigs. Like, it showed some very questionable, very, very shady shit from the American Fork Police Department, obviously. But it doesn't seem like the American Fork Police Department is the one that is now attempting to censor Ben here, under threat of throwing his life away if he continues to talk about them and show his investigation. That is Bricks and Minifigs, the mystery company, whom I believe to be Bricks and Minifigs based on what I think is pretty obvious evidence.
They sent court papers to my email, which I guess a judge approved for them that this was a valid form of service. And so now that I'm officially served, I cannot even mention this company or I will be in jail and everything. Normally I would be like, screw the big guy telling me what to do. I'm going to do what's morally right. But in this situation, if I do that, then all my friends get screwed with this lawsuit and we lose all the GoFundMe money we raised, like, immediately.
Completely understandable. I don't think there's a soul on this planet that blames him for that. There's really no other option than to comply with the demands of this lawsuit here, because if he doesn't, then everyone's getting face fucked. Not just Ben, anyone that was even attached to a single tendril to this case here, including the main victims here, Brian, they would then lose everything that was built up across this with the GoFundMe. So it makes sense why he is unfortunately having to make this decision to not continue talking about it and putting forth the evidence in part 3. I am very curious why they were able to serve him those papers through email as opposed to when Ben was apparently instructed that the only viable means was through amicable, like, service, trying to serve the papers himself. But I guess maybe there's a chance where a judge looked at this and said, like, oh, so Ben tried to serve them, they weren't receptive, so it's very likely that he wouldn't be receptive to Bricks and Minifigs trying to serve to Ben. So we'll grant you the motion to issue the service through email. But even in that case, I feel like that would have been easy for them to extend that same courtesy to Ben to serve through email, but I don't think they ever did based on everything that was shown in the previous videos. So that was a little confusing to me. And it's hard not to immediately think back on everything that was shown via the police body cam and what was said on those body cams and what we saw in some really, really, really questionable behavior from these officers. It's hard not to immediately think of maybe something a little deeper and perhaps a little bit corrupt. But that's where my head goes here, because there are some very questionable things that have unfolded on camera in regards to how all of this has been handled in that space there. But that's all just allegedly. I'm not saying it 100% is the result of corruption, why this was deemed a viable means of service. I'm just very surprised, is all, that Ben wasn't able to utilize email for serving the papers to the franchisees.
So I am no longer allowed to even mention this mystery company. My personal opinion is that this is unfair because this order was put on me because this company was telling the court that I was making bomb threats. I was planning on murdering the manager and employees, which obviously I didn't do, and you can see that in the footage. The only problem is I was not given a chance to share my side. The court just heard their perspective, not mine. So because I wasn't able to share my side, I am now no longer allowed to talk about them, and it looks like this might be it. So, yeah.
It's so fucking diabolical how they make these allegations that Ben was threatening them with bombs and violence and stuff like that. I'm going to go over there and kick their butts. I'm going to go in there and motorboat their cheeks and punch them up real bad and stuff. I'm going to beat them up. They're saying all these things, which then enables them to move this forward to gag him without ever even seeing Ben's side of it, apparently, according to Ben here. That doesn't make sense to me at all, how that happens. I don't know if that's standard procedure or what, but I know in the case of like stalkers, like streamers who have had stalkers, they will give the most unhinged DMs, like actual hard proof DMs, messages, actual threats, even stalkers showing up to their house. They will provide that, and still authorities never really move to do anything to the stalkers. So why are they moving so hard against Ben? Like, again, you can question some of his methods, and yeah, some of it could teeter on like ballpark definitions of like stalking in regards to them trying to like serve them and stuff. But what's irrefutable is how lightly stalkers get taken so often with like actual dangerous psychopaths who are a threat to individuals' safety. They just get to walk away scot-free, willy-nilly, not taken seriously. But in this case, when it's a corporation that's alleging it, now all of a sudden the hammer's coming down. Here comes the giant fist. That's just fucked up. And they apparently didn't even hear out Ben's side, which apparently has supporting video evidence as well to the contrary, proving that he wasn't making those threats or saying those things or doing any of what was alleged. It's weird. It's weird. And the freaks at Bricks and Minifigs just don't seem to recognize that even if Ben can't talk about it, you know what's going to happen? Everyone else is going to talk about it. They truly just don't understand the Streisand effect at all. Genuinely at all. They've never even heard the term, I guess. That nomenclature, nothing. It's a fantasy to them. Like, it could have been so easily avoidable, all of this, if Bricks and Minifigs wasn't such assholes based on all available evidence here. And the CEO is addicted, like I said, to this humiliation ritual of putting his face on all of it. Going on streams, beclowning himself. Like, constantly talking about it himself. So you're hearing it right from the top of the food chain. And it only keeps making it worse, and it makes people keep talking about it. So then, censoring Ben isn't going to just stop the story, it's only going to make it spread even more as more and more people talk about it now that Ben can't. And I cannot believe that they can't recognize that fact. It's fucking unfathomable that people run a company that handles this much money that Bricks and Minifigs does, millions upon millions of dollars, and can't understand the simplest concepts about the world and life. It's so weird to me. It's so weird. But anyway, very unfortunate new development here in this Lego scandal. Had to yap about it. That's really about it. See ya. I am finally all caught up with the latest in the Lego scandal. So, naturally, want to yap about it. I want to bring you aboard the Magic School Bus here as we take a tour through the newest and the most comprehensive dive into this situation, which is found through CoffeeZilla's video. I highly recommend you watch his full video here because he really gets into the weeds of it and shows everything. He bears it all. Lets the entire Lego scandal hang hog in its birthday suit, and I think it is an incredible job he's done. Per usual, CoffeeZilla investigations I think are always just so high quality and just so well done. I want to be covering like a lot of the new information as well as also going over how we got here in the first place, because now after so much has happened, a lot of people have forgotten what the actual facts are. People are, I think, getting confused or just really fallen into the back rooms here when it comes to like this whole story. So they're regurgitating phony baloney nonsense or even just outright myths, or ghost stories. Reckless Ben's not even real. He's been dead for 15 years type shit. And I think CoffeeZilla does a good job of keeping everything extremely clean, and all of it is real information, evidence, facts. Just the straight up pudding of it.
A $200,000 Lego collection went missing, causing a lot of you to ask me to find it. And after seeing the cops point guns at YouTubers, people get arrested and sued for $1.3 million, I decided enough was enough.
Most people said the same thing after seeing how everything unfolded here with the behavior exhibited by the Bricks and Minifigs side, as well as the very shady behavior from the American Fork Police Department in the handling of this case. So it's no surprise CoffeeZilla also said no more Mr. Nice Guy and decided to get down and dirty and get to the bottom of this.
A massive Star Wars collection was put on consignment at a Lego store called Bricks and Minifigs in Salem, Oregon. Consignment just means the owner, Brian Mansell, gave it to a store to sell, and he was supposed to get a cut when it sold. The entire time, he maintained ownership of the collection, and a social media post estimated it to be worth about $200,000. But then, on November 14th, 2024, everything went wrong. This was the night that Crystal and Ben Gorman, the prior franchise owners of the Salem store, got kicked out by this guy. That is Brandon Best. He and his partner Josh Johnson ran a sister store in Eugene, Oregon, and Brandon drove up that night to kick the Gormans out. Brandon and Josh would be taking over the franchise in Salem, and this is the exact moment the Legos go missing. As that store is getting handed over, the question is Brian's collection in it?
A perfect, succinct, previously on Dragon Ball Z lore dump. That is exactly how everything happened and exactly what started this story to begin with, where Brian Mansell had a very valuable collection go into this Bricks and Minifigs on consignment. The previous franchisees get kicked out, and there is a lot of questions around, well, where are the Legos now? Because Brian Mansell, the owner of the Legos, has not been compensated for all the Legos that he had brought there, that presumably had sold as well. And also now Bricks and Minifigs is being like really combative and not super cooperative. So just a lot of like big questions that until CoffeeZilla's video hadn't really had any clear answers with strong supporting evidence and proof that really paints the entire picture clearly on the location of these missing Legos. So the first thing CoffeeZilla looks at is the Bricks and Minifigs official press release where they claim that there is only like $2,000 to $5,000 worth of Legos left there, which is a huge discrepancy based on all of the reporting on how many Legos should have still been there. Coffee then looks at all of the suspects and even toys around with the possibility that this could be someone completely unrelated, like thieves, just regular old Joe Schmo burglars that came in to get their grubby paws on the One Piece here, this extremely valuable Star Wars collection. However, the previous owners, the Gormans, shut that idea down. They admit that they did have break-ins, but at no point were any of the Star Wars Legos, any of Brian Mansell's collection, subjected to that. They were never taken during any of these break-ins, so it wasn't thieves. That is something that gets ruled out pretty early on here. So who has the Legos? Where are they? Does Smog have it and he's just sitting on it like his pile of gold? And it's crazy how this shit can just vanish like that, and no one in a very small, tight group of suspects has any knowledge on where it is. CoffeeZilla even plays around with one of the ideas that maybe Reckless Ben stole it because, as you might recall, the cops came in guns blazing when they arrested them because apparently they had got a tip that the YouTubers in this Airbnb had a conversation about their stolen Legos they have. And also, one of the owners even accused Ben of stealing the Legos when he was melting down, fucking crashing out on a phone call saying, "Fuck you, you stole the Legos, bitch." So CoffeeZilla explores that idea, and it obviously reaches a pretty comically dumb conclusion that there is no world where that happens. That is just barnacles, because Reckless Bin literally couldn't steal them. It actually would have been impossible. He wasn't there that night. He had no connection to the previous franchise owners, had no interaction with like the takeover or anything. He had no chance to even steal the Legos if that was part of a nefarious, dubious plot he was cooking up. Genuinely, it is impossible for him to have been the one to have stolen the Legos. So then, CoffeeZilla, looks at Ammon.
My name is Ammon McNeff. I am the CEO of the Bricks and Minifigs brand.
So my name is Matt McNeff. I'm the COO of Bricks and Minifigs.
The people you just saw are the McNeff brothers. They agreed to speak with me to try to clear their name.
Boy howdy, you can probably already imagine how well this goes. Their defense, not watertight. I am always so impressed by CoffeeZilla's ability to get the star clowns of his investigations to speak directly to him. And every time, without fail, they make fools of themselves. It keeps happening, and I am thankful that it does. I am just always surprised. Now, that being said, Ammon does make a strong point about off-site holding of Brian Mansell's collection, which is something Brian had reiterated on a podcast like a year ago, about how his collection was being stored outside of that Bricks and Minifigs location, outside that facility. It was in, a fucking secure black site or something for security, which I think is very odd. That is peculiar. Why? They store the Legos in fucking Fort Knox or something on consignment? That is very weird, if you ask me.
Parts of it seem to go missing on November 14th.
Well, and I guess no. Not at all. I'm going to say, that is not accurate at all. Because...
So you think that the collection was in the store at the time or elsewhere?
Elsewhere. When you look at Mansell's own words that he reiterated to a podcast last year, he explicitly stated to another podcaster, the sets were moved off-site for security.
The collection will not be stored on site after hours for security reasons, and after Sunday, the sets will be available for purchase but stored elsewhere.
CoffeeZilla then brings this up directly to the previous owners, the Gormans, about the off-site storage of Brian Mansell's Star Wars Lego collection, asking them to pour a bit of milk on this cereal. What does this all mean? What does it look like? And I think the way they explain it does make more sense about why it was stored off-site for a brief period of time. The way Ammon describes it makes it sound like it was some kind of indefinite thing where they had it buried underground, in like a fallout shelter or something that they were, squatting on there, and it seemed very underhanded and shady, but the way they describe it and like the reason behind it, that also makes sense.
Locations. Can you address what that is? Is that true?
So the off-site location in the letter that that corporate is referring to is the original press release that we released when we were launching the collection. In that press release, because we had previous break-ins, I specifically included the location that after this weekend, those Legos would be stored off-site to deter any future thefts. They were briefly stored off-site after that launch weekend while I bought safes for the back room, and then they were moved back into the store.
Okay, so for most of the time, the sets were in the store after y'all got the safes in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To me, that does pass the smell test. If they are having problems with thieves, Lego City's under attack from ne'er-do-wells, well, now they have this extremely valuable collection that belongs to Brian Mansell's father, and in order to try and keep it safe and secure, they don't have any, safes or anything like that. So, in the interim, while they get those safes, they store it off-site. I get that. I do understand that, and according to them, once they did get those saves, they did bring it back, so it was in the store for the majority of the time. It was only off-site for a little while.
And one group in particular is pointing their finger at them very hard. It's the McNeffs who say they were behind on payments.
We started getting calls from the landlord letting us know that Crystal was behind on the lease payments at the location. We had also gotten a couple of notices from some of our vendor partners that bills had not been paid by the store. And so we felt pretty strongly that there was going to be a risk of her just, like attempting to file bankruptcy, doing some of these other types of things, which we've had franchisees do in the past, and that's problematic. So that's why we sent him up there to take some video footage. So we needed to just be prepared if we needed to do a hostile takeover.
This is not new information from the Bricks and Minifigs side of things about pointing the finger at the Gormans, that they are responsible for all this hoopla. They are the actual bad guys here. They may not have the twirled mustache, but make no mistake, they're the villains. So they are claiming that the Gormans were behind on payments, they weren't doing their due diligence, so there was a fear that there might be bankruptcy, skipping town, this kind of thing. So they actually sent Brandon Best undercover, incognito, to shop around and take video to send to them. And this was before Brandon came in to kick them out. So they were already investigating the Gormans and this shop in particular.
It's a video of the store condition in preparation for this handover, but at this point, Brandon does not announce himself to Crystal Gorman. Later though, on November 14th, once again, the same concern about the Gormans stealing or theft was expressed by the McNeffs.
Brandon was trying to make sure that they weren't taking things from the store, and so he was kind of trying to make sure that he wasn't putting things, hiding things in the back, and that and while he was watching that, trying to make sure Ben wasn't grabbing stuff from the store and moving it or doing anything along those lines. Because he just got a weird feeling about the whole transition.
She took at least one, if not more than one, cartfuls of things out to her car with her coat draped over it.
Agent 47, Brandon Best here, is undercover, and according to the McNeffs, filming things to make sure everything's above board and that the Gormans aren't stealing things, trying to prevent theft and make sure everything's, above board and as smooth a transition as possible with all the inventory intact without them, making off with it like bandits. The other McNeff that doesn't have a mustache even claims that she was taking cartfuls of items to her car under her coat. How big is her coat? That'd be a fucking massive coat, right? To put an entire cart full of items under it to try and hide it? What is that like a XXXXXXXXXL raincoat or something? Like, what the fuck? Is it like that old thing of 3 kids in a trench coat to buy tickets to a PG-13 movie or some shit? How big of a coat are we talking here to be able to do that? That's a pretty bold claim. And they follow this up by saying that she actually has a history of retail theft. She has a record of, stealing. So she is someone that they don't trust, and they are trying to put doubt into their credibility in the first place here. So it's something that CoffeeZilla explores with the Gormans directly about that. And she does confirm, yeah, that happened in 1999, when she was 19 and pregnant, according to her. And the big thing here is that she allegedly told them about that, which is something McNeff claims they had no clue about.
Kind of their side. But at every turn, I hope you understand, I'm getting contradictory stories, down to if the McNeffs knew about her history in the first place.
They're bringing up something that I told them about.
Wait, you told them?
Told them. They asked me.
They said they had no idea. They said if we knew, we would have never hired her.
Because we would not have hired her had we known this.
I told them I had a record from when I was 18. There was a family issue and didn't go into all of the details, but they were like, that's so long ago, we're going to hire you based on who you are now.
Now, she says that when she told them about it, it was something that happened when she was 18, whereas apparently it actually happened when she was 19. Not that it matters here in the context of this, but it illustrates the contradictions that are being met at every single stage of this investigation in this case overall. From the very beginning, and that's something I've said a lot of what comes out of Bricks and Minifigs has so many contradictions that are easily accessible to just the naked eye, the peepers here. You can just see that a lot of what they have said is contradicted by other evidence out there. And this is just another one of those examples here, because according to Crystal, she let them know, like off rip, that, you know, when she was 18 or I guess 19, she did have this thing on her record here. And after making them aware, they said that was so long ago, which it was fucking 2 decades ago, that it doesn't bother them and that they're, you know, still willing to do business with her. But McNeff is now turning around and saying they had no idea, and if they did know, they would have never done business with her. You know, this huge blemish on her record, she is a scoundrel. Did you know that? Did you know that she has a retail theft charge? Did you know that? We can't trust her. She's a fucking heinous, evil monster. That kind of thing. When apparently, from the very beginning, according to her, she let them know about that. Also, I would think, as a big corporation, keep in mind, Bricks and Minifigs, we have to remember, is a huge corporation. They have a team of lawyers. I would imagine they do a vetting process for people that they go into business with, because I imagine they would want to know if a new franchisee is like a felon who has a history of stealing and shit like that. So there's no doubt in my mind that before they even approved her as a franchisee, they would have seen this on her record, this retail theft charge. And they still did business with her. Like, I just find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have known about that, because I have to imagine there is a thorough process that goes into being a franchisee owner with Bricks and Minifigs. It's a huge corporation. That's kind of standard procedure, like background checks. That would come up. I feel like it's very unlikely that Bricks and Minifigs had no idea about that before starting to do business with her. And if they really had no idea about it, that just goes to show you that they're not really a very well-managed company if they're neglecting like one of the most standard steps in business, which is just doing a background check.
After a lot of convincing, both sides agreed to show me the photos, corporate and the Gormans. In fact, I scheduled the calls to do this an hour apart from each other. But let's remember their positions for a second. The Gormans say whatever was left unsold of Brian's collection that was in that store spreadsheet was in Salem store the night of November 14th. Then you have corporate side. They say whatever was left that night was maybe $2,000 to $5,000 of Legos. The rest was either stolen by thieves, the Gormans, or held off site. It was not in that store. And on both sides, there's a lot to lose here, right?
This is where it gets really juicy. And now we do get like hard picture proof. And CoffeeZilla also recognizes the effect this has on the others here, the new franchisees that came in. This is the most important component so far in the video about the location of these sets, and also who is being truthful, who is actually providing real evidence to confirm their account of things and disproving the other. That is a very crucial thing to finally have definitive light shined on.
You'd agree.
There's a good amount of Lego on hand. This isn't what I would say is a well-stocked Bricks and Minifigs, but it's not terrible. It's I would say a little below average as far as overall stock. So now let's go to November 14th. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So November 14th. We haven't this is the first time we've shown this publicly. We've been waiting for our attorneys to give us the approval to say, hey, this is okay now to share in this capacity. So we'll go through these pictures. This is what Josh saw, or not Josh, sorry, Brandon saw. He took pictures of everything in the store, all the inventory in the store. This is what the shelves looked like compared to what you just saw a moment ago.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot less. Just to state the obvious, go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm seeing like way less. So yeah, the pictures I was being shown on November 14th, those shelves looked emptier than they did on the day of October 24th. But to be fair to the Gormans, they addressed the empty shelves themselves.
So starting with the McNeff side of things here, they have these videos from Brandon where he was recording the inside of that location. And in the first video that CoffeeZilla is getting walked through with the McNeffs, it does seem like the shelves are far more full. He does say that it's not like a well-stocked Bricks and Minifigs, it's a little below average, but it's very clearly more full than that video from November 14th, which is the big day. The shelves are noticeably emptier on that day in that video.
As we get to the very end of this video in particular, right here, you'll see that empty space right here. So this is the retired and certified set section that we have to keep separate from the new in box current sets being sold by Lego. All those empty spaces up there were the sets that we had on display during the day from Brian's collection that every night when the store closed, we pulled off and put back into the safe and then put back out in the morning.
So when they say, see, there's empty space on the shelves, yeah, because we put them in safes at night to keep them safe.
Because we have giant windows.
Yeah, it's an explanation that kind of makes sense given the history of burglary. Now,
yeah, that is an explanation that makes a lot of sense. Break-ins happen all the time. Like, look at card shops in particular. There's a break-in every hour at a card shop somewhere. Right now, there's someone probably getting their glass broken in and all their Pokemon cards stolen right out of the fucking display. So they have had a problem with break-ins in the past, so it makes sense that they have it on display during the day when there's people there, and then they take it down at night to put in the safes, so that way thieves can't just see these valuable Legos sitting out there and decide to just throw a brick through the window. But when you have these two videos, it's very easy to spin a narrative that also makes sense. Look, these shelves were full on this day, but on the most important day, the November 14th date, they are noticeably emptier. That must mean foul play. That must indicate that they are stealing these sets. That's the insinuation they're making with those videos. And yeah, you could make that argument, but when you actually hear from the franchisee owners here, the Gormans, their explanation makes sense on why those shelves would be emptier.
My understanding is that he took pictures of everything, and all those photos I showed you of the Star Wars were all the photos, or was literally all the Star Wars inventory in the store.
yeah, the McNeffs say all of the photos should be with Brandon of all the Star Wars items. And to be fair to them, they showed me a lot more pictures and even showed me a spreadsheet of all the Star Wars sets in the store the night Brandon took it over. And it valued to about like $5,000 to $10,000 or so. But then I had to ask. Oh, sorry, here's another kind of set.
Okay.
Do you think y'all have all of these?
Very likely.
Okay.
Again, I'd be surprised if we didn't.
But then I couldn't help myself. I started to bring up some of Crystal's photos to see if they matched up. Have you seen this before?
Not that I recall.
So do you see that?
Yep.
So do you see it's in like some kind of like a safe thing? I don't know if you can see the sides there.
Looks like a bookshelf to me, but sure.
A bookshelf, bro. Be real. We're looking at it. What bookshelf has hinges on the left side of it, presumably to close? Not any bookshelves I'm aware of. Maybe it's not, the craziest most high quality safe, with the giant fucking wheel on it like the vault door you'd find at a bank. But that does definitely appear to be a safe that those Legos are in there in Crystal's pictures. So anyway, McNeff is now saying, and even sent a sheet to CoffeeZilla about what was left in the store from the collection, valued at around like $5,000 to $10,000. And while going through pictures, CoffeeZilla starts showing some of Crystal's pictures as well.
Okay, sure, yeah. So I think the important thing is making sure that all of these are in the inventory for Mansell.
Sure. Sure, that's cool.
75041.
Yep. The Vulture Droid.
75169.
169 I'm not seeing, so there may be... Okay, so there's one that is not on our list.
Let's try this. 10240.
Okay, nope, not seeing that one either.
What about 9493?
3. I don't see that one either. So maybe those were locked at the time and Brandon did not get those pictures.
You already tried pissing on my head and calling it rain when you looked at a safe and said it looked like a bookshelf. So it's hard to extend the courtesy that this is like an honest mistake about these sets that are in Crystal's photographs not appearing in their records of the inventory there. Like, I can't say for sure if it's by design, like they're omitted on purpose, maliciously or not, but it is hard to extend any level of benefit of the doubt here. They should be there. And the fact they're not is alarming, and it's something Bricks and Minifigs should take seriously. He kind of like brushes past it a little bit, glosses over it, and like, okay, well, maybe this. But like, that shouldn't be the response. Like, it should be something that you want to immediately look into a bit more on how this could even happen, this mistake, if it is a mistake.
All right, that's kind of a problem because the Gormans had over 200 photos of this store. I definitely knew looking at these photos, there's a lot more Legos in the Gormans photos, by quite a lot that Brandon's photos just didn't show. But corporate didn't really see it that way.
But still, in the grand scheme of things, we're not talking, again, 10 times the amount of sets here.
I don't know. I haven't shown all the photos yet. I don't know exactly how much.
If there's a calculable figure that we can look at and say, great, this is what was there, I promise you, it's not $100,000 worth of Lego. And so where's the rest of it? He got me. I don't know.
Maybe I'm a little too in my head about this U-Haul story. You don't think it could have been some U-Haul thing? There's no way.
So, to me, I believe the Gormans provided significantly more hard evidence with apparently a couple hundred photos showing significantly more Lego sets in the store than Brandon's documentation had and what Bricks and Minifigs is touting. I don't think that's something to just gloss over here. I don't know if McNeff realizes how bad that looks for them. It's hard to chalk that up as some honest-to-God mistake or something like that. Especially when at every turn, McNeff is trying to, like, minimize the amount of Legos with this discrepancy. Like, okay, even if there was some unaccounted for and some wackiness, documentation got cattywampus, it's not 100,000, it's not 10 times. Yeah, you might have a couple hundred photos, but it's not like that much. It's just, it's very fishy behavior. And speaking of fishy, it's about to get real weird with the U-Haul story.
So when Brandon came to the store that night, he was driving a U-Haul truck.
Now, in typical fashion, this was immediately disputed.
Brandon showed up to the Salem store in a rental car. When he came to get the keys from Crystal, he was there in a rental car, not in a U-Haul.
But the big reason it mattered to me was because I was actually called by an ex-employee of the Bricks and Minifigs store in Eugene, Oregon. Remember, that's the one that Brandon and Josh owned. And he told me something very interesting.
I'm a former employee, started in 2024, and I was working under the old manager, Brian, and he sold the store to Brandon Best and Josh. Like, oh, Crystal stole Lego sets and bolted out of the country.
Who says that?
Brandon Best told us. When he was dropping off all the Lego sets to us that night. There was a bunch of used Lego sets that were like saran wrap. They had Star Wars CD. They had just a lot of stuff. It was like a medium-sized U-Haul truck.
Wait, they brought a U-Haul truck.
Yeah, from Salem to Eugene.
And to Eugene, and it had a bunch of Star Wars sets on it?
Yeah, Star Wars sets, like everything. A bunch of used stuff, too.
So CoffeeZilla was contacted by a former employee at the Eugene location, which was owned by Brandon and Josh, and he talks about how he watched the Reckless Bin YouTube video, and a lot of like what they were experiencing with on their own started to make sense. And then even talks about how that U-Haul that has been brought up by the Gormans actually arrived at the Eugene store full of Lego sets. Saran wrap Lego sets, Star Wars Lego sets. This is a huge, big claim here. And this is a real former employee. CoffeeZilla did his due diligence, from everything I can tell, to confirm this really is an employee who worked where he said he worked, which was at that Eugene location with Brandon and Josh as the owners. And he is talking about how they had a U-Haul that brought these Lego sets, and they were saying, like, that facility was closed down, you know, shit was, like, haunted. Crystal, big thumbs down, boo, Crystal, we don't like Crystal, boo. She was, like, stealing Legos and stuff. And then he arrives on his chariot here, his U-Haul, with these fucking Star Wars sets. That's big. That is colossal. And Bricks and Minifigs, McNeff there, you can hear him still denying the existence of that U-Haul in the first place. It is heavily disputed, saying he showed up in a rental vehicle, not a U-Haul. Explicitly saying not a U-Haul, but the Gormans are saying it's a U-Haul. A former employee at the Eugene location is saying it was a U-Haul. I mean, it sounded like it was a fucking U-Haul to me. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, probably a fucking U-Haul.
Like, if you were to look at the footage, the ring cameras, all that stuff, you won't see a U-Haul sitting anywhere in the parking lot.
So after hearing all of this, I realized, look, I just gotta find the evidence. So I start sifting through these photos I have, right? I realize I have a parking lot photo. I check it. No U-Haul, just a red truck out there. I check another photo where you can see the window, but the problem is it's night outside, so you can't see. And so I'm looking at everything I can, and there's just nothing, you know? I have this alternate angle, I'm looking at that, and then, wait a minute. Zoom in on that photo. Bring up the brightness of this photo a little bit, and my gosh, there's a U-Haul in the parking lot right outside of the store the night of November 14th, 2024.
I mean, is this not CoffeeZilla just reaching over to deliver the scholar's mate here on that claim of no U-Haul? They now have irrefutable evidence of that U-Haul's presence there on that night, which confirms the Gorman's account of things and disproves the Bricks and Minifigs side of things. Now, there was that truck that was there in, like, the footage that CoffeeZilla had access to, but there is also a U-Haul there. So, does Bricks and Minifigs just deny the U-Haul in light of irrefutable proof and try and stick to the story that we now know is inaccurate about no U-Hauls being there, only a truck? Or do they try and feign ignorance like, oh, we were only made aware of that, like, rental truck. We had no clue about this U-Haul scheme here.
This is something that Matt said he had seen footage of, and it couldn't be true.
And again, I believe I have seen footage from that night that shows clearly out into the parking lot, and there's no U-Haul.
After seeing this, I said, I really have to make a call. And that's when the story changed. So last night, I talked with Matt McNeff. I brought up this question of the U-Haul. He told me emphatically there was no U-Haul. Y'all came to me this morning. You said, hey, we looked into it. There actually was a U-Haul there that night. Can you clear up what that's about?
So there's actually two different things that are going on here, just to help you understand.
Bro, I hate the way Ammon talks. I hate the way he conducts himself. His clothes, whack. His mustache, whack. This guy sucks, man. Like, let me just help you understand, actually. So, yeah, there's a U-Haul there. We know you found it. We know you found the evidence of the U-Haul. We're gonna have to change our story a little bit. We're gonna have to tighten the screws a little bit here and try and get something cohesive here, because yeah, that doesn't look good, because we really were strongly saying that there's no U-Haul. So here's the spin. Here's the scoop. And I don't want to torture you with more than necessary Ammon words that he dribbles out. He's basically now spinning this web here that actually this is a big misunderstanding. There's a odd conflation that's going on here about, like, the U-Haul. Like, it's not actually there for, like, this store's inventory. There was a disgruntled former employee, and there was a bit of mishandling of inventory, so now the U-Haul's there for that, something totally separate, and you know, now wires getting crossed, everyone's all over the place. But yeah, does that clear it up? Does that make sense? It really just doesn't make any sense. He's saying that collection that he had brought to the Eugene store was from that other problem that they had, and the employees just misremembering the timeline. Like, those Star Wars sets that he had in that U-Haul didn't come from, you know, this one. It was from something totally separate that he was also just doing it, like, the same time as him investigating the Salem store. He was doing them both. He wears many hats. Jack of all trades. He's very talented. So yeah, he was doing that. And then when he came back on the 14th, he then starts talking about, like, oh, he had, like, a rental truck and he tried to attach a camper to it, but it just wasn't rated for that. So he thought, oh, crap. Like, this is the story that McNeff is telling. Like, it is quite a tale. It is like a, you know, an epic up there with the Iliad, I'd say. But, like, it's not really making a ton of sense to me.
In anticipation, meaning like a camper trailer, in anticipation of the potential hostile takeover previously.
Is that why he had a U-Haul? Is that the reason he had a U-Haul was for this camper, or what's going on with the?
Yes. So then what happens is he takes his rental vehicle truck, and he tries to connect the trailer, the camping trailer, to that truck, and it's not rated for that particular weight, and he realized, oh crap. He called around and found that U-Haul had a rating for one of their box trucks, and so he grabbed that, went and got it at 10 a.m. on the 14th, and so he then went and hooked that trailer up to the camping trailer to a U-Haul, drove that trailer down to another location where he could set up the camping trailer in Salem, dropped off the camper trailer, and then he arrived in a U-Haul to the Salem store, and then
what a story, Mark. Fuck me, bro. The amount of and thens, it's like he's writing fan fiction live. I'm taking a peek inside the writer's room here. Like, he's talking about all of this as if he was like a force ghost on this guy's shoulders, like watching him do all of it. Where is this even coming from? Like, this, who would ever do this, by the way? The story he is telling, I can't fathom a human being doing. Like, it's just so messy and sloppy and convoluted. Like, I just don't see a world where this would be a path that someone actually takes. Now, I'll go ahead and spoil that the U-Haul plotline doesn't get us anywhere closer to finding the Legos, but I do think it is important because it illustrates their willingness to change their story or just outright tell a fib. So, CoffeeZilla got documentation of that U-Haul. He got photos from Brandon of that night, and there's so much discrepancy there that it literally would be impossible for the story to have gone the way that Ammon is claiming it did. The timing is just not feasible. It literally cannot happen the way in which it's described. So even though the U-Haul doesn't help us solve the mystery Lego here, like CoffeeZilla get to the bottom of it, it just shows to me the willingness for Bricks and Minifigs to just start spinning their fucking wheels about basically anything, and just a complete refusal to like even stick to their own story and their own facts. Like, it's constantly changing with them, and there's always like contradictions that seem to pop up. It is just very shady, I would say. In particular with Ammon's behavior, this guy has a humiliation fetish potentially. He loves to put his face on claims that have contradictory evidence publicly available. So like in this one, he tells this whole story, this novel that he writes here about like the U-Haul to explain it, even after the other McNeff firmly, sternly, with no riddles, no guesswork, no wiggle room, saying there is no U-Haul, that's wrong. Now proven that wasn't true. There is a U-Haul there, and now Ammon's got this massive story cooked up about it. And the story just, like, there's no way it can be true based on everything CoffeeZilla was able to gather from Brandon. Like, the actual documentation. So, like, I don't think there's any world where that's true or reality, yet he's proudly making that claim, even when it's, like, evidence contradicts it, like, provably contradicts it. That's why it's just so peculiar to me. Like, they keep saying these things and can't even stick to their own story.
First, from corporate, I got the point of sale records from the Salem store from 2023 to 2024. And secondly, from Crystal Gorman, I got her internal records of Brian's inventory of what was sold or not in order to pay him and keep track of prices.
Now CoffeeZilla gets access to some of the bookkeeping here. And he talks about how the original claim of this being a $200,000 Lego collection is just not true. It's highly inaccurate. It was used as marketing buzz online, yes, like from Bricks and Minifigs themselves as their marketing material, like the $200,000 collection, that kind of thing, and that became, you know, the most eye-catching part of this whole story is how much the Legos are worth. But according to all of what is available here, the actual estimated value is calculated to be around $107,000 according to what CoffeeZilla has access to. Still an extremely valuable Lego collection, but that claim is just not accurate about it being $200K. It is still extremely valuable, and that is still an extreme amount of money, but it is important to get things correct. And the correct amount is around $107,000. Which, as CoffeeZilla mentions, is somewhat nebulous because they're not all sold, so you can't really say exactly what the value is because they haven't been paid for, so maybe it could be a little more, maybe a little less, but it is not fair to say it's $200,000. He then talks to Ben about it, about how surprised Ben is because he'd been led to believe it's $200K this whole time. He then talks to the Gormans about it, and Crystal talks about how she initially arrived at that number for the sake of like the press release to be eye-grabbing, but in her spreadsheet, she calculates it around like the 85 to 120K ballpark range, not 200. That was her arriving there off basically like eyeballing it and then putting out the press release about this huge collection that is very valuable that they got their hands on. But as she actually went through the inventory in the spreadsheet, it was closer to that like 100K mark.
It's about $107,000. Now, between 2023 and 2024, the Gormans record sales of about $24,000 of Brian's collection in their inventory tracking list. And of those sales, Brian was entitled to about 65 to 70% of it. He was paid $17,000, which roughly tracks with that. Which means on November 14th, the big night, the remaining amount of Brian's collection that should have been in there is about $82,000.
And this is why having the correct number is important. And it's something CoffeeZilla mentions. If you're going to be trying to locate the missing Legos, you have to know what you're even looking for and how much you're looking for here. Because if it's a $200,000 collection, there is a lot more out there in the fucking wild, out there in the rain and cold, needing to be found. But now that we have the accurate numbers, you can start to more fine-tune the investigation to locate them. So, on the big night here, on Judgment Day, $82,000 worth of Legos should have been in that store. Which is a really big deal because Bricks and Minifigs officially stated that there was only like 2,000 to 5,000 that they located there. And McNeff even said that there's only like 11 to 15K total Star Wars in that location. How is that possible? We have the bookkeeping. There should have been $82,000 worth of Star Wars Lego sets from Brian Mansell's collection there. But according to Bricks and Minifigs and according to McNeff, I don't know why I blanked on his name so hard, fucking McCheeseburger here, according to him, there was only 11 to 15K in total Star Wars there. So that's not adding up. Where is it?
So I went through Crystal's photos myself, which she shared with me, and hired people to go through and hand tag the Star Wars Legos that were in these photos. We looked through over 200 plus photos, multiple videos, and matched what we saw with Brian's collection. In the end, I ended up with about $21,000 of Legos matching Brian's collection that can be proven to be in the store on the night of November 14th. Now, to state the obvious, that's about 3 to 5 times what corporate estimated, at least on their press release. Now, yes, there are inherent errors in these estimates. Maybe we picked up some Lego that matched Brian's collection, but wasn't Brian's. But even though this is a bigger number than corporate said, I have to admit, even with pretty generous assumptions being made, there's still a huge gap of about $61,000 here that I just couldn't find.
I think that was a really clever way of doing things here. He has so many photos from the Gormans here, and he hired a team to go through manually au naturel and tag them. And so that way they could find the valuation of what is provably in the store on that night. And there is still a large amount unaccounted for. Like, yes, of course, give or take, there's some error there in how it was gathered and like what the actual value might be, which he points out. But even still, that is such a good thing to work off of there. Because now you have provable amount of what's in the store and what is still just completely lost in the ether, fucking ghosts out there.
But then I learned Brian had made a special side deal with M&R Productions, who had recently purchased some Legos from him. And this is where it starts to get messy. So these are the pictures that M&R Productions sent me, looking at the Lego that Brian sold him. This was stuff reportedly in storage, and it's interesting because of an early inventory list, which had a column called Location that Crystal used. And it listed a lot of the Star Wars items as being located in what they called storage. Now, previously I was told that all of the stuff in storage was put back in the store, but there's a bunch that's on this list that I can't find in the store that seem to appear in these pictures. Now, I've been assured, by the way, that most of these Legos were not part of the inventory spreadsheet. They were never given to Bricks and Minifigs. This is a separate part of the collection, but I did a check, and 100% of the items that match the Brian collection inventory just so happen to be listed with a location of storage. So this starts to make things incredibly fuzzy, and I'm inclined to believe that a lot of these are part of that same inventory list.
Yeah, I think that's a very natural conclusion to draw from that. And this is a really big thing that I had never heard anything about. This side deal on the Star Wars Legos that were sold to someone else totally outside of all of this commotion, but those sets still appear in that spreadsheet, but they're marked as located in storage, which, as CoffeeZilla points out, storage is something, according to the Gormans, that they had offsite, but would bring back to the store and put in the safes. So, like, it was in their possession still, like, securely locked down. But how could that possibly be true if they have been sold to somebody else, and there are now pictures to confirm it, and it seems like it is all part of that collection? It shouldn't be appearing in the bookkeeping at all in that case. That is super messy. And according to CoffeeZilla's estimates, it comes out to about $15,000 in Lego that isn't missing. We can see where it went. It was sold to somebody else, but in the inventory sheet is still marked in storage, which I believe is very inaccurate to say, and that is quite shady.
Anything. And by the way, before we continue, yes, this was all a lot of work. If you want to, please support us on Patreon. That's how this show gets made.
I wanted to leave that plug in here because CoffeeZilla's work truly is incredible, and I highly recommend everyone go support him in any way you can. His investigations, I think, are among the best, not only on YouTube, but just in general. He really does get to the bottom of his fucking stories in a way that is very rare these days, and I'm always appreciative of his work. Now, the next thing he's looking at is the point of sales records. And in there, he notices that, according to this, $51,000 worth of Brian Mansell's collection was sold. And according to Crystal herself, back in like an earlier talk with Coffee, she even says like $50,000 of the collection was sold. But Brian's only been paid $17,000. What sense does that make? He should be paid more. He is owed more. So where is that? Where has that gone? Who came in and shook that lunch money out of him?
Hey, it was about 50-something thousand.
Yeah.
But Brian was only paid 17,000.
Okay.
And it should have been about double that.
Without seeing any of those records, without seeing those individual tickets, I can't answer that any better.
This is kind of a problem. The math ain't math in here. 65 to 70% of 50,000 is almost double what we believe Brian was paid. And digging into the details, it turns out a lot of these sales come from what Crystal's spreadsheet actually categorizes as layaways, meaning they were marked as having been sold, but layaways are when someone puts a down payment on an item and later pays it off.
I imagine if any of you are familiar with layaways, you just rolled your eyes in a big way. That always ends in a lot of fuzziness, a lot of friction. So now we're starting to see something very new in this story here. So CoffeeZilla has learned that a lot of this comes from layaways.
Worth about $20,000 in layaway. And that felt a little strange to me. And because of that, I asked Josh Johnson, the incoming owner, and he responded, quote, "There were 2 to 3 items on layaway when they took over."
I haven't gone through and done a count, but I know it was vastly more than 2 to 3.
It was about 98.
That makes sense.
Coffee then tries to wrap his head around this whole huge amount of layaway, and Crystal then explains, like, yeah, it is extremely rare, and she says that she's not even sure they've ever done layaway until this set came in, but then goes on to explain, like, how their layaway worked, where they'd, put the down payment, then make payments over, like, 30 days, and that kind of thing, and that it was just the way she dove into it was already very much a lot of moving pieces. She even mentions like one set in particular went on layaway 4 times and then eventually got sold. So like this amount of layaway and like the discrepancy between how much layaway, like what Josh is reporting and what is reported on the sheet, like the whole thing with this layaway here is already getting into some really spotty ground that makes it hard to like really nail down what's going on and why. Because it feels like a crazy amount to be doing on layaway, which is something CoffeeZilla mentions as well.
So a lot of these are, see, like look at this, like so like it says POS final sale price, but it's listed as a layaway, but it's sold for $5.99.
Yeah.
Because it matches with the store sale price.
Okay.
So were they on layaway? Were they accidentally marked layaway on the spreadsheet? What's going on there?
Our Ewok Village was one of those cases. At some point he had, I think, like 8 or 9 different items on layaway. So they'd come in and make a payment for a bulk payment. You know, I've got 800 things on layaway. I'm going to make $100 on my payment. One customer in particular would do that, and then when he'd gotten up high enough to pay for one set, we'd pull that set out, mark it as sold.
She states numerous times that without being able to see like the actual sales ticket, she can't really give a great explanation, but she talks about like one of the more complicated layaway experiences they had, like with the Ewok Village, and like you can see where things are getting really muddy through this layaway protocol that they had there. And it's leading to a lot of funky bookkeeping that is making some really odd stuff come to light. And another thing that CoffeeZilla gets into, I think, is a very big one.
But I even found more than that in this POS data. I also found about $10,000 in sales that match Brian's collection that were not marked as sold under this inventory spreadsheet.
Some of our things that were not found were explained by the POS system because they were found in the POS system as being sold. So like they weren't marked on the spreadsheet, but they were marked as sold via the POS system. And this is about $10,000 worth of Lego that basically were matched.
There is a possibility that the consignments were ended when I wasn't at work and I just didn't go through and pull them up. They didn't get put in the consignment ticket. I hadn't gone through those consignments in a couple of months. I hadn't gone through the inventory in the back room in a couple of months. So it is entirely possible there were sales that were finished that I never clocked as being finished. I don't know that without going through and actually seeing it.
But you're saying it's possible stuff was sold, not updated on this inventory list.
It's entirely possible.
Now that is a big stinky whoopsie if things from this collection are being sold and they're not being updated. And Brian is not getting paid because it's not getting updated, so they don't know that it's getting sold in the first place. You can see where we're having a big problem now. This bookkeeping is now seeming to be the most egregious catalyst to where this whole thing started, with this missing Lego collection and him not being properly paid for Legos that may have actually already been sold and aren't even missing. Now, in that audio recording, when Brandon Best came in and kicked them out, she does make a mention that Brandon may not have been paid yet everything that he's owed. That is something that is explicitly mentioned by her. CoffeeZilla also plays the recording where you can hear all of that. I've played it for you a couple times. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And is assured by the man on the phone, who we know is Key, I already forgot how to say his fucking name, that the consignment liability will be taken on by the new franchisees here that are coming in. So Crystal does make a mention that Brian hasn't received everything that he is owed here from all of the sales, but from the bookkeeping here, it looks very messy, so the amount that he was going to get paid from Crystal probably still wouldn't have been accurate, at least not in my opinion. Not based on everything I'm seeing here, because it seems like a lot may have been overlooked, forgotten to be updated, or just lost somewhere along the way in the bookkeeping, which would make it very, very difficult for them to properly compensate him for what they have sold from his collection, either through layaway or through just finishing that consignment there on those. So it was already in a weird spot, but she did recognize that there was money that he was owed and put that on the radar of the new incoming owners.
Maybe you can chalk some of this up to bad record keeping between the U-Haul, the layaways, the $20,000 in Lego sets that corporate called $2,000 to $5,000 that was there that night, the off-book deals. But even if we can't fully know 100%, what these weird things were about, I think they tell a story of what actually happened to Brian's collection. In a way, multiple people, I think, are kind of right, kind of wrong. The Gormans were correct that more of that collection was there that night of the takeover than previously thought. But corporate also alleged that some of it was offsite, and that appears to be partly true, although some of that is disputed, and it looks like, way more of the collection was sold and layawayed than Brian was paid for. But all in all, there's a lot less missing than many people think, especially if your starting number is $200,000.
Very, very, very true. Yeah. After watching this, it is extremely clear that from the very beginning, there was not nearly as much missing as everyone thought going into this story. And yeah, Bricks and Minifigs seems to be liar, liar, plants for hire in a bunch of cases, sure, but their claim about the off-site stuff, yeah, Coffee's right. It does seem like on all available evidence, that is true. Not just off-site and then brought back and put in the safe, but sold off-site, to that other guy, the M&R. And then the Gormans are correct that there were more Legos there than Bricks and Minifigs is saying. And it does look like a lot of this goes back to really terrible record keeping. I don't know whether that's malicious, the Gormans were trying to scrape from the top or try and stiff Brian and take the lion's share for themselves and use underhanded tactics for it, or if it really was just bad bookkeeping because they weren't very good at bookkeeping. It's hard to say for sure. I don't know one way or the other on that, but the layaways and how they kept track of everything is clearly a huge issue that definitely made this situation significantly messier. And according to CoffeeZilla, Brian Mansell is still owed $50,000 to $83,000 by his estimation here in payments that he hasn't received that he should have received in this general ballpark range. That is the most important piece of all of this. A man who's been really wronged on all sides here, it seems, that is still owed this money here from this fucking conundrum.
For Lego he wasn't compensated for. And I think honestly that's something that Bricks and Minifigs obviously should handle and make right. Regardless of what a franchisee does, the new one, the old one, the company behind it must stand behind their product, their service, and I can't imagine a better example of a company doing the opposite. Unfortunately, Bricks and Minifigs has chosen to deflect and dodge responsibility at most opportunities and created a really awful customer experience that has snowballed into this crazy series of events.
That's so fucking right. CoffeeZilla absolutely hitting the bullseye. It's something I've been saying from the very beginning. Even if Bricks and Minifigs at some point along this journey came out and proved everyone was wrong here, at the very core, Brian Mansell is a customer who attempted to use the Bricks and Minifigs service because he believed it was the gold standard and his best bet to sell his father's lifelong Star Wars collection for life-changing money, and through this ended up getting completely shafted. And yes, a lot of it could maybe tie back to the terrible record keeping with the previous owners, but at the end of the day, it is something that Bricks and Minifigs themselves should have been more than willing to make right on their own, because it is still their company, it is their brand. And every step of the way, they villainized Brian. They attacked Brian and refused to make it right without this huge public spectacle putting pressure on them. Now Ammon's singing the whole, let's just all be friends, come grab my arm and we'll square dance type shit. It took a huge, massive avalanche, as CoffeeZilla describes it, to finally get them to even toy with the idea of making it right. But they have nowhere along this path actually wanted to do that, which is why I've said this makes no sense for their business, because who the fuck would want to work with them going forward? Because if you are Brian Mansell in this case, if you're a customer that wants to use Bricks and Minifigs and you're going to sell through them and something goes wrong, they're not on your side. They have proven that they will be actively combative against you and will do everything they can to slap you down for their own self-interest. That is the most glaringly obvious fumble you could ever make as a business. And it's something Bricks and Minifigs still to this day refuses to recognize.
But instead of taking accountability for that, they've taken an aggressive legal strategy, which I told them personally was a horrible idea. As of writing this, Brian Mansell is being sued for $1.3 million as part of a legal campaign against him and Reckless Bin and any of the associates. Remember, Brian is the same guy who lost all these Legos at Bricks and Minifigs store. And I told the CEO and COO that's ridiculous and they should drop this. Look, mistakes have been made by plenty of people here, but there's a lot more people who have inflicted self-owns, the likes of which we've rarely seen, by just choosing the worst possible path at every fork in the road. No pun intended. But the best path to making things right, in my view, is by just making Brian whole and moving on.
Yeah. So as Ammon continues to do his, playing the world's smallest violin for why won't anyone think about Bricks and Minifigs feelings, we just want to make Brian Mansell whole. That's the main thing that we're thinking about over here. We just have him constantly in our thoughts, and we're praying for him, and we want to help him. We want to work with him collaboratively as best friends together. I want to kiss him on the mouth. I want to have a group hug in the shower with Brian and all of our team together as one nude, just going on and on about how their mission is now to help Brian, do everything they can for Brian. And meanwhile, they're actively suing him for $1.3 million, which is why everything Ammon is saying about it just feels so fraudulent, feels so scummy. He is a snake. He's saying that he just wants to help him and make Brian whole again. We want to give him what he's owed, while actively suing him for $1.3 million. CoffeeZill's right. That's a terrible idea. And again, this should show every customer ever in the LEGO community to not work with Bricks and Minifigs. Because Brian's only crime was getting fucked by their business. Yes, their franchisee, the Gormans, definitely played a huge role with how they handled things and making it so messy in the first place. But when he tried to correct course and try and get what he's owed and going through corporate, look at what happened. Look at what's happened. Yes, he went to Reckless Bin as well, where things really popped off. But what other avenues did he have? He couldn't fight them legally. There's even record of a Bricks and Minifigs higher up, someone that's not at the bottom of the food chain, that has a pretty substantial position there, on record, on the phone, even saying that they will just financially bleed them dry, talking to the Gormans. They'll draw it out in court and they'll lose more than they would have ever made should they win. Going the legal route for an ordinary citizen like Brian Mansell is an extremely costly and not actually attainable path. So he tried to do everything in his power to just be paid what he's owed. Be made whole again. Just try and get this resolved. And look at what's happened to him. Bricks and Minifigs is suing him for $1.3 million. I don't blame him for going to Reckless Bin. You can point the finger at Reckless Bin the way he handled it was bad and counterproductive, whatever. But without it, nothing would have changed in Brian's personal situation here. And it's just, I don't know how anyone could possibly defend Bricks and Minifigs' decision to sue him here. $1.3 million? He is a victim of your business. Man, this shit is crazy to me. It is a terrible idea, and they refuse to back down on it. This is why I really just don't think anyone should do business with Bricks and Minifigs going forward. They are not good partners to work with. They are not looking out for you, the person that wants to do business with them. This shit is just ridiculous.
They were basically met with, unreasonable requests, things like that. So,
verification? Documentation? Is that unreasonable, do you think?
I think they would say they provided the documentation, and you guys say you need more documentation. So, that's kind of the
right. A spread, I understand, a spreadsheet and a contract are a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we never got that. That was never sent to us at corporate, by the way.
Y'all do have the spreadsheet though, yeah? Y'all have the spreadsheet.
That was shared online, but months after we asked for it.
It says it's. I'm so confused. It says I'm on the file right now. It says storage used, owned by BAM Franchising Inc. Owner Salem.or bricksandminifigs.com.
What are you looking at?
It is incredible how Ammon cannot help but put his own dick in his mouth all the time. constantly. So this is like at the end of CoffeeZilla's video now. He's given his thoughts on this whole thing and his conclusions, and he was taking it to the parties involved here. And when talking with Ammon, Ammon's like, oh, we never even got that. Which is just provably false. CoffeeZilla, to his face, proves that they had access to this spreadsheet that he's claiming they didn't have access to until months later. That is a verifiably false statement, Ammon.
It says owner salem.or at bricksandminifigs.com. That's you guys. It says owned by BAM Franchising Inc. It says created September 6, 2024. And when I look at it, this is the Mansell list, I believe.
So this would have been created under so we have the
y'all definitely have this. Y'all have access to this.
Well, I had no idea.
Then you're dumb, Ammon. Then you're just stupid. How about that? You're just an idiot. You're a bumbling imbecile. You're a moron. And yet you continue to say like, oh, they never even provided it. Well, you just don't know then because you're too stupid to know. Like what? Ammon actually boggles my mind, bro. It's crazy.
Like, so if this is the first that anybody has shown me that a spreadsheet was created using like Bricks and Minifigs Salem, like, and all of this stuff was archived. This is the first I've seen that this spreadsheet was created by Crystal, and we don't know how accurate it is, how up to date it was. We don't know a lot of those types of things, and understand. I appreciate you sharing this with us because we had no idea. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't we don't know everything, and we don't go looking in every nook and cranny everywhere. We just don't know some of those things. So
then you're a bad business. Then you're just a dog shit business. This isn't a good defense, Ammon. Oh, we just don't know. We just actually don't keep track of any of this shit. Yeah, we just actually have no idea. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know your own business. Man, wake up. Use your head. You shouldn't be in the position you're in then. How about how does that in any way excuse anything of what's happened here? It's a terrible defense, man. Especially when you keep trying to poke holes in other people's stories when you admittedly don't even keep track of your own shit. You don't even know your own things. You don't even know what you even have access to in the first place. So how can you even be approaching things to talk about them or opine on them, Ammon? You're off your gourd. But yeah, anyway, it was a fantastic investigation that I really do think got to the bottom of most of the meat and potatoes here. At the end, the Gormans also mentioned that they recognize that a lot of this falls on their shoulders for potentially bad bookkeeping, and that they're more than willing to take accountability for that and try and make it right, but they need the tickets from Bricks and Minifigs, which they said they would do, that kind of stuff. All in all, just another banger here from CoffeeZilla, and an incredible investigation, and can only hope that Brian Mansell gets made whole here from Bricks and Minifigs, and they actually pay him what he's owed. They need to make things right, and it starts with making him whole and dropping that fucking lawsuit, you actual imbeciles, man. It's crazy. Anyway, though. Amazing work from CoffeeZilla. Please go support him in any way you can. That's really about it. See ya.